Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and today I have a very special guest on my show. Now, this is the Susan Brender Show, and we love dancers. Now, Judith FLEX Helle began dancing and choreographing and producing professionally in 1980 in Berlin, Germany, with her concert modern company, FLEX. Now, she danced ballets and operas with the Deutsche Opera Berlin for 6 years, also performing in films, TV, and music videos, as well as 3 years touring internationally with Brazil following. Now, in addition, she performed as a trapeze artist internationally in circuses, theatrical performances, and other settings. I want to welcome to the Susan Brender Show, Judith FLEX Helle.
Good morning, Susan.
You know, that's a very impressive bio. I mean, you've now done so much. Now, let's start this show with you telling us what you were all about. What's your story?
My story, people ask me this all the time. I think my story started as a very small, scrappy tomboy in a tutu little girl. My parents were professionals, but they loved the arts, and I grew up listening to Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake, and understanding about the Impressionists and so on and so forth. So my worldview from a very early age was kind of fantastically included in the arts. And I was sent to dance class at age 4, both modern and ballet. And I was also, although tiny, I was very athletic. I was a very fast runner. And something that led towards my trapeze career, I was literally the best tree climber in our neighborhood. So I know that sounds odd, but for anybody who knows aerial, they understand how that could possibly be helpful.
Now, let me stop you here for a second. Now, you just mentioned something that I find very interesting. When you were young, you climbed trees. You probably loved the outside. You probably did everything in nature that was possible for you. Today, our children, all that you see them is on computers, on their cell phone, playing games, doing all of that. Aren't they missing something in their life?
They are really missing something. And I am also a mother, which I didn't include in my bio, and I have an adult child who's 26. And as a parent, I made it a point from the get-go to go outside every single day. And we grew up in Los Angeles, which is a very urban environment. We lived in an apartment, so we didn't have a backyard. So I took my daughter to the park every day, and she worked that playground equipment. And there were many people there, mothers, nannies, fathers, who would come up to me and ask me if I wasn't afraid for her. She was climbing something and doing something daring, to which I simply responded, I'm watching her. I think she can do it if she thinks she can do it. And I do believe that letting children play outside freely without parental interference is critical to their growth and confidence and how they explore and understand the world around them. Yeah. Let them bike fast. Let them rollerblade fast. Let them go surfing. Let them play basketball. Let them do everything that's in their power athletically. It can't possibly but help them in all the other areas of their life that they may need, computer and otherwise.
Now, let's stay on this subject for a moment because, again, I find it very interesting, and I think my audience would too. Now, you say that the choice is of the family. And why are the parents, in your opinion, not making the choice for children just to be children rather than to be, these like robots that get on all of the computers, as I said? Give us your opinion.
I kind of feel like, certainly in Los Angeles today, what I see is most parents from all income brackets are pretty overworked and stressed out these days, maybe with the exception of the 1% parents who I think are also stressed out in their own ways with their children being over-programmed with activities. And I think that, everybody's so dreadfully concerned about their own lives that it's truly difficult for people to unplug and simply experience life the way one can experience it if you're not always looking at a smartphone or a computer or a tablet or watching TV. Mm-hmm. It's difficult for people to unplug now, and so, it's hard for them to let their children unplug.
Yeah, that's true.
I actually have a lot of sympathy for parents nowadays. One of my friends lost a babysitter who was an adult because she needed to make more money. Mm-hmm. And when I suggested the high school students who I used, she said, I just can't conceive of leaving the house to somebody who's attached to their iPhone.
Yeah. See, there you go. All right, let's move ahead because we could stay on this subject all day. Now,
for the rest of the year.
The rest of the year, you're right, Judith. Now, Judith, you started Luminario Ballet of Los Angeles in December 2008 with a foundation grant from the Charles Evans Foundation.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to get. Now, since then, Luminario Ballet has performed for over 30,000 people in California and nationally. Now,
actually, we're up to about 50,000 people. We've just been growing and growing and growing and getting more and more audience. So, we've been reaching people.
Why is that? Because I have personal experience with modern ballet companies, and I know that they struggle day by day to stay alive. So what is your formula?
Financially, we are struggling as hard as anyone. The donor base in California is meager. We actually get a very hefty percentage of our financial donors contributing from the East Coast, and I work hard to maintain those relationships. And in fact, our foundation grant that started our company was from a New York foundation, even though in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I try to really reach out and collaborate with other arts organizations to a mutual goal. So, for example, we do try to participate in dance festivals where we feel there's a large audience. We do try to collaborate with the symphony orchestras in the Southern California region, and we have performed with 5 of them, from the Los Angeles Philharmonic down to the small New Valley Symphony. These are groups that bring in wonderful audiences in the thousands. And it helps them learn about contemporary ballet, and it also helps them learn about Luminario Ballet, our company, my company. So collaborations are very important, and for example, this weekend, Luminario Ballet is performing our most popular piece, which is a ballet and aerial ballet to the music of Led Zeppelin called Led's Aerial. And we have a music ensemble of 6 musicians, strings, flute, and drums, who will be playing acoustic Led Zeppelin with us at this show. So this is another way of collaborating.
That sounds very wild. Just stop for 1 second. Let me pick up on this. Now, you chose Led Zeppelin music, which is very, very wild music. And you also told me that before you went to classical music. So how did you decide to do this?
Well, the Led Zeppelin piece was a piece a very long time in the making. And I think a lot of the times audiences don't understand how long the artistic process sometimes takes. But I first started listening to Led Zeppelin and considering making a piece way back in the 80s. And then in the early 2000s, I started rehearsing with my colleague, who's also the star of this show, Drea Weber, to Led Zeppelin while we were doing trainings. And at that point, I let go of the concept, wouldn't it be great to do a full concert of aerial ballet to Led Zeppelin? And at that point, I had no idea that Led Zeppelin was so popular. People listen to what they listen, and they listen privately or at home or whatever. but, especially in the world of ballet, it is mostly classical or, modern classical music, with a few exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly nowadays, people are performing to things like Prince and U2 and Joni Mitchell and the Beatles and so on and so forth. I could rattle off the companies that have done so. But the Led Zeppelin idea was mine, and what was so fascinating about this project is we did our first show of this piece in 2003 at a nightclub in Los Angeles where they made it, happen for us. Mm-hmm. And my brother, just for the heck of it, as we say, for S's and giggles, sent off the video to Jimmy Page and Robert Plant's management companies in England. Ah. And over the next couple of years attracted their attention. So when we did the show again in 2006 at that same nightclub, which once again made it possible for us to present there, those two actually attended the show, which was pretty epic. And it went from being a public show where we could sell tickets to being a private show because the guys said if they came, no one could know. So that was crazy. And then when I started Luminario Ballet, I adapted the pieces for the ballet company and put a lot of the dancers into it. And, of course, we have aerialists, so they performed the aerial parts. So we've been doing it in repertory since 2009. Mm-hmm. And this year's show is the 10th anniversary of the show that we didn't get to actually put out for the public, which is when Jimmy Page and Robert Plant came. So we're excited about it. And getting back to you about classical versus rock and roll, I fully believe that some of the rock and roll artists that we love so much are classic, which is why they call it classic rock. Mm-hmm. What is it that makes Beethoven's Ode to Joy so singable, so resonating with everyone? We all know it. Mm-hmm. And what is it that makes Aaron Copland's Western stuff make us feel so deeply, it sings to us? These are composers who, although hundreds or 100-year-old, their music feels fresh. And certainly the dancers, ballet dancers dancing to these composers, these people are alive to us. Yes. If they were around, we'd want to talk to them and, hang out and drink wine with them after rehearsal.
Sure.
So the rock and roll people who speak to us in that way, and I'll go to Complexions with U2 or the Canadian Royal Ballet with Joni Mitchell, and the Beatles with New York City Ballet and so forth. These are composers that have the same kind of universal resonance musically to the dancers and to the public. So the public want to play their music, they want to hear their music, they want to see it played live in whatever way. Mm-hmm. And Led Zeppelin certainly falls into that category of classic rock that appeals to everybody. If you walk around, you'll see 75-year-olds wearing a Led Zeppelin T-shirt and the baby in the baby rompers wearing a Led Zeppelin baby romper.
Right.
They're just a very universally popular classic rock group.
Now, stop for a second because here it goes. The physicality of being an aerial ballet dancer must be absolutely amazing because, look, I want you to tell our audience what's involved in being somebody who can climb ropes, can actually climb a mountain in a sense. So what is the process? How do you become an aerial dancer? I mean, that's a unique form of dancing, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I'd like to get back to climbing trees at a young age. I also was one of those kids who was, as a small girl, there was only one other girl in my gym class in the whole school who was able to climb a rope from the bottom to the top besides me. Climbing, for those who've never done it, to climb a 20 or 30-foot rope is a uniquely exhausting exercise. It requires a full body commitment from all the muscles in your body. And you're not going to get up top if you don't use everything. There's no way to walk up the rope the way you might walk a path that instead of running. Say you run out of breath when you're running and you decide, well, I'll just walk the next half mile. There's no way you can walk to the top. You have to climb. So climbing is really critical. And when students would ask me if I would coach them, my first question to them would be, how many pull-ups can you do? And if they said, oh, do you have to do pull-ups? I'd end the phone conversation or the conversation, and I would simply say, come back to me when you can do 10 pull-ups. You have to have what in our industry lexicon we call an instrument before you can begin your training.
Right.
So what that means is, for the girls, especially the ballet girls, they need to build up their upper body. They need to get rock solid abs. And those are things that you can't pretend to have. Either you have them or you don't.
Oh. And
the biggest issue with that is safety. The body understands very well when it's not safe, which is why a lot of people don't want to climb a ladder. They freak out. It doesn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or they don't want to walk along the edge of a cliff because they don't have good balance. They think they're going to fall over. It doesn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Or they don't want to swim down to pick up something at the bottom of the pool. They don't feel safe. So with aerial, the amount of physical ability you have is directly correlated with your safety. And there is no such thing as an imagined feeling of safety. Either you have the confidence to feel safe, technically and physically, or you do not. And a really smart coach and an experienced aerialist always knows if they're safe or not.
Right. And
Whereas
they don't take chances, do they? Do they take chances?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, because the consequences of making a mistake are either a severe injury or death. People do. Once every 10 years, there will be an accident, and someone will die.
Wow.
And it's 99.9% never the actual aerialist. Mm-hmm. The two large accidents that have happened in recent years, one with Ringling Brothers, and one, I think they were both with Ringling.
Wow.
Over the last 10 years, were both rigor error, meaning the equipment failed.
Right. Oh, my God. Now,
it was not the error of the performers.
There's no safety net available to them?
Well, with flying trapeze, typically you do use a safety net. With single aerial apparatuses, you do not. There are many flying acts that have minimal, if any, safety lines. At the beginning, Cirque du Soleil used to use safety lines. Nowadays, they typically do not. Mm-hmm. The more people in an act, the more dangerous it gets because of the variables, timing variables, within a millisecond, physical variables of people's health and wellness from day to day. Mm-hmm. So the less people there are in an act, the more your rehearsal can increase the safety factors that your act will be safe. Mm-hmm. So the safe act is a solo act.
Yeah. Now, here's one of the things that I'd like to know, and that is, what is your nutritional schedule, if you will? How do you keep your body strong enough and in good health? There must be something very special that you have to do, because to have the energy and to have the ability to do what you do is quite amazing.
Well, aerial's very tiring. I think most people know that exercise is tiring, but aerial is tiring in a unique way because you expend so much muscle power that afterwards your muscles are depleted, and you find yourself, falling asleep randomly here or there while your body tries to repair. So I recommend a regimen of high-protein diet And although there are some vegetarian aerialists, the easiest way to get the best muscle protein is with red meat. And at this point, I'd like to encourage people to buy responsibly, organic, farm-raised red meat.
There you go.
Responsibly farmed. Because it has high B vitamins in it, B12 and B15 and I think it's B8 or B7, B6, that's it.
Yeah.
B6, B12, and B15 are just about impossible to get in any other food source. And you can take them as a tablet, but they don't go into the body as smoothly as they do when you actually eat red meat. And nowadays that can include venison, bison, or buffalo. Mm-hmm. You can eat wild red meat. It's just as good, a little harder to find. Mm-hmm. But that's really the secret, and any bodybuilder will tell you the same thing.
Yeah. Now, Judith, I'm just curious about this. If you are a child or an adult, any age, and you want to really be in good health, is it possible for you to get involved in aerial activities so that is the beginning of your staying well and lots of fun? Did you ever see people do it?
Sure. One of the wonderful things about the vacation group Club Med is they, at many of their family-oriented resort clubs, they have a circus club where all ages can do different circus arts from the children on up to the adults. And oftentimes this is people's first exposure to aerial, whether it's climbing up a silk or jumping off a platform 30 feet high on the flying trapeze in a safety line. And because of the popularity of these vacations, a lot of circus schools have popped up around the country and around the world. Mm-hmm. And there are many in most major cities now around the country, whether it's New York or Chicago or Boston or Florida or Texas or California. You can Google trapeze school fill in the blank, and something will come up. It's pretty amazing. It's very popular now, whereas when I learned to do it way back in the day, really the only way you could learn was either to be born into one of those circus families or to marry into a circus family.
Right. So
nowadays, you can enroll your child in an aerial arts class right down the street from here.
Yeah, isn't it something? Well, we've come a long way, haven't we? Yeah, we've come a long way. Now
sports have come a long way. I just want to go along with that. I mean, all sorts of sports are much more available now to a much wider group of enthusiasts than ever before.
Mm-hmm. That brought up a point that I've been thinking about. There are many athletes in all different kinds of athletic activities. And wouldn't it be interesting if they started just using aerial ballet as a means of developing their skill as an athlete?
Well, one of the things I'd like to mention about aerial, and this is a very common error among the public's perception. People think that it's just a great workout and that you just have to be a great athlete to do so. Aerial requires a particular kind of psychology and a particular kind of a mind to do. It's not for everyone, and I would advise strongly against pushing it on other athletes. An aerialist has to go through so much psychologically before they have any kind of comfortableness that it's really not for everyone.
Is it because of the danger that's involved?
It's very dangerous. Yeah. And also, anytime you invert the body, and by that I mean head down, feet up, there's a huge segment of the population that no longer knows right from left. Mm-hmm. And if you can't, when you're being coached and you don't know which way is right or which way is left or which leg is right or left, you're going to be in deep trouble. And although safety lines are used in flying trapeze, they're typically not used in other aerial arts. And so the coach is going to make a decision at a certain point. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the student will come to that before the coach, just realize, wow, this is scaring the crap out of me. I'm already frightened before I get to my training. I don't think this is the right thing for me.
Right.
So I would advise against using it as a popular way of training sports athletes. I think it's just exactly the wrong thing to do. Right. I think there's a very particular group of athletes who have a general preparation for this. Obviously, the gymnasts come into play, who are tremendously focused no matter what upside down or sideways or inside out they're doing. Mm-hmm. And they also bring upper body strength with them, and they bring flexibility that's required, whereas there's a vast amount of athletes who are never going to need to do the splits, not even close.
Right.
And some of these movements are just basic ABCs in aerial. So it's a particular kind of person who would go there.
Well, we're almost at the end of our show, so I would like you to talk about Lead's aerial, because that's the next thing coming up, and of course it's probably one of the most beautiful things. So I want our audience to know where they can go, how they can see you, and just give them your last word.
Sure, we would love to have them. Lead's aerial is taking place in Los Angeles, California, and you can buy tickets on our website, which is luminarioballet.org. And I know you're going to post it on your site so that people can get the spelling right.
Right.
And it's going to be this Friday and Saturday, the 29th and 30th of April at 8:30 p.m. at Fedodo, which is a sort of a Cajun New Orleans-style club, and has a very large room where we're going to do this show. Mm-hmm. As I said before, we have a live music ensemble who's going to be performing, and guest stars from around the country. We've flown in aerialists from New York City and from Las Vegas, and Drea Weber, who is the aerial choreographer for Pink and Cher and Katy Perry and so forth, is starring. So that's huge. And it's going to be a great show. We hope you all will come.
Well, that's very important for our audience to know. Now, are you going to take this show on the road?
We would love to tour this show. And so hopefully by presenting it this time, we will gather some interest from some presenters who will collaborate with us to get this show on the road.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, I see that you collaborated with Deborah Lynn Brown from Cirque du Soleil. Now,
yes.
Cirque du Soleil has a name, and of course, it's been very popular for quite some time. For sheer curiosity, is your show a little bit like Cirque du Soleil?
In some ways, yes, it is. Many of my colleagues, aerial colleagues, came through Cirque du Soleil, meaning that they spent 3 to 5 years as performers from Cirque du Soleil. And the reason that Deborah Lynn Brown wanted to work with us is that one of my original Luminario Ballet aerialists, Bianca Cepetto, was in Cirque du Soleil and knows Deborah Brown. And so she connected the two of us when Deborah Brown would look at our videos and say, oh, I really want to work with Luminario Ballet. Mm-hmm. And when we sat down our very first time, she surprised me by saying that she wanted to do a dance theater piece on us rather than a piece of ballet and aerial, which is more what she typically does. Mm-hmm. And she did a beautiful piece called Brace Yourself, which is about a crazy Bermuda Triangle airplane trip. It's sort of a surrealistic dance theater piece about, when your plane gets somewhere else than where you thought it would be. And it became one of our most popular pieces, and we performed it to thousands of people, including at the World Dance Awards, where it was literally the toast of choreographers from coast to coast. They were all on social media going on and on about how Luminario Ballet rocked.
Oh, wow. Well,
and that was the Deborah Brown piece. And we have a great relationship with her and would love to work with her again as she would with us.
There you go. Well, my guest today has been Judith FLEX Helle, who is an amazing dancer and a choreographer, and she's produced professionally for so long that you can imagine how great her shows are. So I want you all to pay attention to the fact that she is now producing something called Lead Zerial, and it opens on Friday in California. And for those of you around the country and around the world, just take a look and see whether in the future she'll be bringing her show to your state. So thank you again for being on my show, Judith FLEX Helle.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.